it's a very difficult kind of subject to go into. It's hard to go into it without creating, because first of all, you have the charge of anti-Semitism is hurled almost immediately at people wanting to talk about this in a objective way. But beyond that, there are a lot of like far right, alt-right people who they take the position that, that Hitler was good. They're like this kind of fringe political, and they are very opposed to these ideas. So you get to a position where you kind of piss everybody off, but that just shows you're on maybe the right track, because this stuff has been hidden, and the kind of the broad outline that I have presented, and I think there isn't enough, and I don't have enough like research power to really be conclusive about this. But man, it sure looks suspicious to me, and I would sure like to see this as an area of research taken up by schools, by institutions. This is, there's all of these New Testament scholars, there's all of these kind of historical departments, in universities. What the heck are they doing?
Right.
Nothing. They're just regurgitating ideas which are, now that the independent media has come into existence, are really, being exposed as not as solid as we were led to believe. And so this is an area I hope that others will take it up and try to follow Blavatsky and that strand of mysticism into the creation of Hitler, and also the British Freemasonry, the Quattro Coronati group, into the what becomes a political force to create Israel, because those two strands, in my opinion, are the ones that really need to be understood. And I'd also like someone to find out, why did the Bolsheviks use the swastika in 1917 as their occultist symbol? That would be another.
I have one idea about that.
Yeah.
It's a great question. Before I could really express my perspective on why they chose the swastika, I have to do a little bit of preliminary explanation as to what Freemasonry is from my experience and what I've heard other Masons describe it as. So this is a quote I've heard recited from many Masons. It is, "Freemasonry is a peculiar system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols." So the word peculiar here, I've laid out some of its philological foundations, because I think they do relate to the ultimate nature of the order, for better or worse. So peculiar, you can see here, it also relates to not only to uncommon or odd, or something that is a particular group is known for, but also for money. And when you look at the connection between the Knights Templar and central banking, the central bankers have, for the most part, taken over the world and conspired using secret societies as a means to, as Joe has shown, finance groups like the Theosophists, who can socially engineer culture to their ends. And they feel that they are exempt from karma because they lay it out symbolically to us. And this is how they treat their fellow Masons also. If you're a Mason who's an entered apprentice or a fellow craft or a master Mason, you're a portico Mason, you're only in the lower tier. And because of this, you're being deliberately misled. And Albert Pike's quote attests to that. He states, "The blue degrees are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. Their true explication is reserved for adepts, the princes of Masonry. The whole body of the royal and sacerdotal art was hidden so carefully, centuries since, in the high degrees, as that it is even yet impossible to solve many of the enigmas they contain. It is well enough for the mass of those called Masons to imagine that all is contained in the blue degrees, and whose attempts to undeceive them will labor in vain, and without any true reward violate his obligations as an adept. Masonry is the veritable sphinx, buried to the head in the sands heaped round it by ages. Albert Pike, 33rd degree, Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council, Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, USA. All right, next we've got the image of the Master of the Second Veil, which, for those listening at home, you have a gentleman with his feet splayed, shoving his right hand, into his jacket, obscuring it. So it's the hidden hand he's performing. And this is part of the Royal Arch Masonic degrees. Then you've got Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, and Karl Marx all performing this gesture, showing their level of initiation as Royal Arch Freemasons. The problem is they're all mass-murdering psychopaths associated with the worst crimes of the last century and a half plus against humanity. You've got the father of communism, you've got the architects of the Russian Revolution, World War I, and continue on to World War II. Probably hundreds of millions of deaths collectively can be attributed to these Freemasons. Now, I don't know of any Freemasonic order has ever denounced or disowned them or explained this. Maybe I'm lacking critical information. If you're a Mason or someone who has that knowledge, send it forward. I'd be happy to publish it. I'm just trying to get to the truth here. That's why I call it Gnosis, because I want people to discover the true nature of our reality together through open inquiry and dialogue and discourse and debate if it's called for. For those listening at home, if you really want to understand this on a deeper level, you need to see the slides, but I'm going to do my best to try to illustrate what they are verbally. Okay, so next slide, we've got William Blake's depiction of the great architect of the universe, or the demiurge. He's setting his compass upon the great deep. And this is the cosmology of Freemasonry, where the great architect creates reality by spinning it into existence. And it makes sense on so many levels, because from the submicroscopic to the supergalactic, everything rotates around everything else. Everything's whirling. And when you think of Yahweh as a storm god, perhaps that's another interpretation. As it goes with symbolism, it's open, and it continues to accrete different explanations for all of these symbols, and they may all very well be true on some level, but it also allows for occulting meaning, and that's where we're going to go with the next image, which is the back of the $1 bill. You've got the all-seeing eye, the eye of providence, floating up above the rest of the, I guess, mundane or profane or lower levels of initiate, non-initiate people. And Annuit Coeptus means he favors our undertaking, referring to their version of God. And then Novus Ordo Seclorum, meaning new order of the ages. Next slide here, we've got a pink line superimposed upon the angle of the Great Pyramid, or the pyramid for this illustration, and it's 23.4 degrees. You can look to the right and you'll see that this happens to be the exact same angle that our Earth's axis is tilted over from 90 degrees relative to the plane of the ecliptic. Interestingly enough, the complementary angle to this axial tilt is 66.6 degrees. So you take 90 degrees, you subtract 23.4, you get 66.6. So the four seasons as we know them are a result of this axial tilt. And this has import for the dying god cults of the mystery school religions all over the globe. They follow the seasons: Osiris, Christ, Attis, Adonis, Abraxas, you name it. They're all defining themselves according to nature's process through the ages or through the years. So also what you're going to see is that the Sun, Earth, Moon system is defined by this tilt, and that's where you can look at the Holy Trinity as being a relationship to the mathematics of the universe and to those constants being precise enough to provide life as we know it, the space to unfold. Okay, the next slide, we've got a little piece of scripture from the book of Revelation. It says, "Here is wisdom. Let him who hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man, 666. That's from Revelations 13:18. Then we've got a few numbers that you can crunch along at home if you like. So we've got 29.78 kilometers per second. That's the given speed from the NASA Earth data fact sheet from the Goddard Space Flight Center. You can look that up to confirm independently. Converting that into miles, into miles per second, it's 18.50 miles per second. To convert that into minutes, we multiply by 60. That gives us 1,110 miles per minute. And multiply by 60 again to get hours, we get 66,600 miles per hour. So that's the second 666 reference that is embedded in our sun, earth, moon, solar system parameters that is auspicious and is related to, of course, the Bible in different ways, where, say, for instance, King Solomon is given 666 talents of gold. And of course, you have the association with the devil and Satan, that being an unholy number. But this is all Kabbalah. This is all a way of kind of compressing and providing a condensed associative train of information that can be unpacked according to one's level of understanding and provide new insight. That's not inherently evil, but it is a method of obscuring different interpretations of information. So a Christian literalist would look at this and maybe shriek in horror because they've been programmed to, whereas, say, a Kabbalist or a Freemason esotericist would say, well, this is related to the blueprints of the heavens that the great architect laid out. And they're both true in some regard. That's where it gets tricky. Also, if you take the number 1318, multiply 13 by 18, you get 234. If you reverse or mirror that number and add it to itself, you get 666 as well. So that's kind of a wink and a nod from the Kabbalist who originally designed the scripture. If you listen to Joe Atwill, if you follow his work, most likely it was Domitian Caesar. And that's, if you want to dig that up yourself, go read Shakespeare's Secret Messiah. You don't have to, but I suggest reading Caesar's Messiah first. Then you'll get the most out of it, but you can skip right ahead if you want. Okay, this next slide, a lot of information here, a little more detail. So, Annuit coeptus, it means Providence favors our undertakings, or Providence has favored our undertakings. But what is Providence? Providence has a lot of meanings. And also we see deeper information about the origin of the phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum. It says here, the phrase is a reference to the fourth Eclogue of Virgil, which contains a passage that reads, and so I'm going to skip right ahead to the third line. It says, now justice returns, honored rules return, or return of Saturn's reign. So Saturn, or Satan, or El, as he's also known, as well as, so many other multiplicitous interpretations of this storm god character from the Middle East, is potentially who's being described here as Providence. So they're the ones favoring this undertaking of Freemasons to create the New Atlantis, the New Jerusalem, America. You can see some of the different names for Anu are the Sky Father, King of the Gods, Lord of the Constellations, Allah, El, Il, Ilu, God, Yahweh, Aeon, Uranus, Zeus, Caelus, Sol, Jupiter, Satan, Lucifer, and Samjaza, God of the sky and heaven. Titleist, the one true God, the monad, Parabrahman. So I think that's at least 10 different names for this deity. So each of those could, in fact, be who they're referring to. And that type of syncretic organization allows for a lot of loose interpretation, because each of those could have its own respective belief system that they could cite. And if you didn't know that there were different interpretations or different names for the same God, you'd be totally blind to what was being espoused as to their nature. And if it's Satan and Yahweh all at once, it lends credence to the Gnostic belief that the demiurge was in fact an evil god, and that this realm was ruled over by said evil force. I'm not saying I align with that view in particular, but the battle of good and evil has raged on in the time of man, as far as I know, since day one, since our inception. Okay, Um, so altogether, Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum means Providence favors our undertaking for the new order of the ages. What is the new order of the ages? Well, this is where we get into astrology and astronomy, as well as deep time, larger epochs of time that have played out, and different perspectives as to how they relate to evolutionary cycles of man and our ultimate destiny, at least in regards to what Freemasons believe about the nature of reality and their place in it, and what their objectives are on different levels. Next, we see The Ritual of the Operative Freemasons by Thomas Carr, MD, PM, so the medical doctor, past master perhaps. MD may have a Masonic definition that I'm not aware of. It says here, the swastika is probably the most ancient and most widely distributed symbol that has ever existed. The author in another paper has traced it back to the Great Yellow or Turanian race and shows reasons to believe its distribution took place in the Bronze Age, and that it was originally the emblem of the rotation of the 7 stars of the Great Bear around the polar star, and was the symbol of the Most High God, who there reigned and ruled the visible universe. Among operative Freemasons, the 7th degree candidate is taken into a vault under the Grand Lodge room, and from the darkness looks up to the center of its roof, and there sees a large letter G, from which a plumb line is suspended, which hangs down into the chamber in which he is placed. He is told that this plumb line comes down from the pole star, and that the swastika is its symbol. The swastika is depicted on the sacred pedestal in front of him. When an operative lodge is opened in the 7th degree, each of the Grand Masters puts his square together with the square in the volume of the sacred law in such a way as to form a swastika, which is a much venerated symbol among all operative Freemasons, and is held to represent El Shaddai, or the Most High himself. These secrets of the Masters have been described by me in another paper, and they still further support the opinion I have endeavored to maintain in these articles. One of the most remarkable facts about these secrets is that the 7th degree operative Freemasons are taught that the polar star is the real seat of power of the Most High, and that the swastika is his symbol and the emblem of the pole star. This is esoteric teaching which has long perished in Europe, and is now only to be found in India, China, Japan, and in the valley of the Euphrates. It is ridiculous to pretend that a body holding such doctrines can have emanated from a modern society founded in 1717 or thereabouts. Okay, there's a couple different ways to look at the Little and Big Dipper. You can see in the bottom left corner here, if you're viewing on YouTube or BitChute, etc., the Big Dipper rotating around Polaris in our current epoch. So it looks like a swastika rotating. I'm going to show some video here in just a moment, emphasizing that fact from Stellarium. You can tell the time of day according to the movement of the Big Dipper. You can tell the season you're in, which is important for agricultural purposes and would have helped our ancestors survive, knowing when to reap and when to sow. You can see in the center panel here a Chinese equivalent of the Big Dipper mixed with the Little Dipper, and it forms a swastika when defining the 4 times of day, the 4 main components of the day, the 4 seasons of the year, and then extending into the great year cycle, the 4 beasts of the apocalypse. Okay, we've got a time-lapse photo showing the rotation of the Earth, and what it does is it gives also the movement of the heavens from our perspective. You can see the focal point Polaris here is where the plumb bob would be hanging from in the lodge, representing north. And of course, our alignment to the heavens is defined this way. And in the right panel, you've got the Milky Way galaxy spiraling out swastika-like as well. So fractally, almost like Russian dolls nested within each other, you've got the same rotational form playing out in different dimensions. Go to stellarium.org, download this program if you want to learn astronomy on the cheap. Notice Polaris, notice Ursa Minor whirling about it. Here's the chariot wheel rotation. This is the pivot of heaven animated. Of course, it's like much faster than you would see with the naked eye, but this is to emphasize this motion. And you can also see the Big Dipper swirling around. So the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper both create the swastika associated with the North Pole for this epoch that we're currently in. So when they say the New Order of the Ages, in regarding stellar magic, it seems they perform ceremonies in tune with the larger heavens as a way to invoke their will. So when it says the Eye of Providence or Eye of Horus or Providence favors our undertaking, this is what they're referring to. And if you think in terms of the great year cycle, the precession of the equinoxes establishes different ages, and a lot of times events are done to culminate with those larger motions of the heavens and the transference from one age to the next. Okay, speaking of the great ages, here are a few graphics I've created for cosmic patterns and cycles of catastrophe, as well as Magicians of the Gods by Graham Hancock. If you look to the left, you've got an overhead view of the circumpolar stars, which also define the ages. As the Earth rotates and orbits around the sun, it precesses or spins like a gyroscope. All right, this is a video that you can find on YouTube called Precession of the Earth by Stephen Sanders. It's phenomenal. I think it's a great, quick way to get to grips with this celestial mechanic, this motion, and how it relates to the North Pole. And so remember, this is the god of time manifest in understandable astronomical motion, and this is what gives us the cycle of the ages. Different gods are worshipped in different periods of the ages by different religions, and you could make the argument that most religion is founded in a basis of astrotheology, so it would be really critical to make sense of it all beyond, say, just metaphor. You see, as the Earth precesses, the age we're in shifts 1 degree every 72 years on average. So one age takes about 2,160 years to traverse, and it takes 25,920 years to make a full circuit or full cycle. These stellar magicians apparently linked the 9/11 false flag attack to this cycle. And in doing so, they were carrying out a form of black stellar magic that was also imbued with Phalemic or OTO, Golden Dawn, Crowleyite style magical practices. Thankfully, it seems the New World Order is failing now and they're being exposed, but they're still coming for us. They're still trying to destroy us with the Fovid monstrosity and so many other ways they're trying to get us to sacrifice unto Molech, whom they've essentially sold their souls to for worldly power. So there is some real power in this belief, at least, if nothing else. And I've got an article on the website, 9/11, Gnosis, and Cycles of Catastrophe. Check that out if you want to get a little bit more insight into that. And also check out the book by S.K. Bain, The Most Dangerous Book in the World, 9/11 as Mass Ritual, to get a really thorough breakdown about the Phalemic connection to all of this. And if you look at the Podesta emails, you see Hillary Clinton and others using the terminology Phalema, looking for Phalema favors, and of course they're associated with sex trafficking, which is the abusive black magic of the Skull and Bones Society and other negative mystery school religions. So I don't see Freemasonry as being exempt from that. I don't know, I'm not an expert in black magic, but I'm just here looking for the truth, so I thought I'd share that. All right, back to the previous graphic. Just to meditate on this, get familiar with the motion, recognize the pattern of the heavens, how it relates to sacred geometry, how it relates to Freemasonic practices. The lodge is seen as a microcosm of the universe, the solar system, the earth. It appears that there's really not much difference between initiation into witchcraft and into Freemasonry.
You were met by the high priest or high priestess at that time, usually with a sword to your chest.
When I went to enter the lodge, a sharp object was put to my left breast, and I was warned that should I reveal any of the secrets of Freemasonry, to know what to expect.
When you're presented before the high priest, a sword is held against your chest, and you actually take a blood oath, promising to remain faithful to the secrets of witchcraft.
Well, when you are in the room, this blindfold is taken away from you, and this is a time when they say that you're coming from darkness into light.
During the initiation ceremony, the initiate is led by the lieutenant of the high priest and is challenged at the edge of the circle by someone saying, "Who goes there?" And the answer is, "One from the world of darkness."
In Masonry, the prayers are ended with "so mote it be."
Oh, and one of the other aspects of, or distinctives of the craft was that we would always end any spell or ritual where we released the power, this is where the power was released, with the word "so mote it be."
I was intrigued to discover that witchcraft and Freemasonry had so much in common. However, in white witchcraft, followers dismiss the biblical concept of Lucifer. Freemasonry goes so far as to actually call Lucifer God. In the words of Sovereign Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry, Albert Pike, yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately, Adonai, the Hebrew God of the Bible, is also God. And the true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai, but Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil. Listen to the words of 33rd degree Mason Manly P. Hall. When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply this energy. Of the literally millions of Masons worldwide, how many of them are actually aware of the true meaning of the Masonic symbols? The answer is very few. Since most Masons never go past the 3rd degree of the Blue Lodge, the rank of Master Mason, the vast majority of them never discover what they're involved in. And they never will discover what Freemasonry is all about, unless they venture into the higher levels of the Scottish Rite or the York Rite. In fact, they're not just ignorant, they're deliberately misled by their superiors in the lodge. In the words of Masonry's own authority, Albert Pike, the blue degrees are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine that he understands them.
All right, so there you have it. There's the nitty-gritty on why they have sworn oaths of secrecy. Because when people realize that you're doing black magic, they're going to see you as an enemy and not someone they want to deal with. You will be seen as an outcast. And so the hidden hand, Moses, when he supposedly meets Yahweh on the mountain, Yahweh convinces him to shove his hand inside of his jacket. And he says, look, it's leprous as snow. Well, this is more mystification. Leprous can also mean scaly. So I think in a way it's again, like peculiar. There's multiple interpretations, but one of them, rather than just being white as snow, it's also describing you're becoming sinister and snake-like by maintaining a false front, by holding within you dichotomous positions and cognitive dissonance and embracing sociopathy. You're being dishonest. And I don't think Yahweh is God. Why does God need babies' foreskins? Why does God need men to castrate themselves symbolically through circumcision? Why would God need any of that? It makes no sense. It's a witch's covenant with some elemental force. And Yahweh is the 4 elements. So again, it's a pagan system. Yud, He, Vod, He. That's fire, air, earth, and water. And this is a way that they can use the Bible to obscure their true intentions and to keep the people in the lower levels befuddled and hoodwinked. And it's time we grow up as Americans, understand that Kennedy was trying to warn us and that these people are murderous savages and that no Mason should be trusted. They should not be allowed to hold political office. I don't care that George Washington was a Mason. What it's morphed into, if it was in fact good at that time, is nothing to be proud of. And we need to fling open the doors. Notice that Masonic temples do not have windows. There's a reason for that, guys. It's black magic. It's witchcraft. They presume that they have the right to do this, and their so-called libertarian values are really just saying, allow me to live as I want without any moral compass, even though they also project that they are moral individuals. It's all a fucking sham. All right. That's some of my perspective. Now we've got a graphic here that I made based on Randall Carlson's research as a catastrophist geologist, and these are events in the time of man, anatomically modern man, in the last 144,000 plus years, that were each so destructive that they would be able to reboot civilization as we know it. And I think there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 here that coincide with sacred geometrical templates of time that we see in the Great Year Cycle. And if you want to know more about that, watch the film I made, Cosmic Patterns and Cycles of Catastrophe, based on Randall's research. It's all there, and it's on YouTube. If you don't have the money and you want to see the full 4 hours, I'll give you the copy. Don't worry about it. And you can donate if you want, but you don't have to. So anyway, so these are the catastrophes in the time of man, the tempo of global change. Anatomically modern man means that our ancestors had the same cranial capacity. They're likely to be just as intelligent as we are. So what gives? Why were they not as advanced technically? Well, like Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the hill, we've been rebooted time and again, where secret society and other cults lose. The plot is that they do not own that moral degeneracy has a consequence in this world, and that we will not be allowed to evolve. That's how I view it. I don't think it's just happenstance. It could force us to evolve and get into space, yes, but if we, it's like moving to a new town. If you haven't changed, you're just in a new environment. You haven't become a better person. And allowing secret societies to dominate us, to farm people for organs, Falun Gong, to see Satanism and communism still at the door, as we see here with the infiltration of America by the deep state, which is, the birth, the afterbirth of the CIA, the OSS, and all of these conspiring families that are all linked to black magic. Fritz Springmeier's Illuminati bloodlines, that's real. The Merovingians, absolutely. This whole constructed mythosphere where they control 1/3 of the population plus with the monotheistic religions, and then the rest are kind of left to fend for themselves. We're at an age where we're going to have to develop new means and methods of understanding ourselves and God and our place in the universe beyond recapitulating the old template. And that's multiple volumes of podcasts and books discussing what's gone on there. But here's the chart. It is in the film. You can see this. I've put all this out in the public domain. So for those who want to know, it's there. Okay, this is a graphic I did, an infographic. I took the linear chart and I made it cyclical. I made it circular. So from the inside out, radiating outward, you have great year cycles. And then I've plotted those catastrophic events and labeled it as such. So again, you're going to have to find a monitor to really get to grips with this. But sure enough, the Templar cross, the Maltese cross, the 4 beasts of the apocalypse, they're here. And sure enough, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different events coinciding with that. And this is a result of interactions in space. This is probably also the result of God knows what. I mean, it could be that mankind has been fallen for a very long time and that we are still Sisyphus-like pushing that boulder up the hill. We're still like Prometheus strapped to the rock, and we're having our liver pecked out by Zeus, Yahweh, and it continues to regenerate. And until Hercules shows up, which is maybe our higher self that's ascended to a higher dimension, we're going to have. So again, if you see the whole film, you'll see the connection to Freemasonry and sacred geometry. And this is hopefully something that we could, with knowledge, with understanding, overcome in time. So the Bolsheviks, they took something like, because they were inspired by Theosophy, the Tula Society and others, because they were inspired by Theosophy, they may have been aware of this cyclical pattern of destruction, and they may have their own belief that they could create an arc for themselves, avoid catastrophe, return to the Earth's surface to rule again, as they did in the golden age, as they see it, or the time of Saturn. And if you look into Saturnalia and how their world is comprised, it makes sense when you read a book like Brave New World from Aldous Huxley that these ancient bloodlines, that's what they really want more than anything. They feel that they were taken away from paradise where they could live like gods and do whatever they wanted to anyone else forever, indefinitely. And humanity has by and by been willing to fight and die to live free, and that's not something that they appreciate very much. And so they've worked out incredible techniques of sophistry and manipulation to get us to kill ourselves and perpetuate patterns of abuse going back to the Old Testament and beyond. So this here you're seeing, these are each events that, the world would be completely destroyed, made anew. And I hope that the works like Joseph Atwell's Secret Language of the Oligarchs help people understand how not to be gaslit and abused by these narcissists and these archons, because they need our consent to go along. The minute you refuse, the minute you abide by principles that are aligned with the golden rule, is the minute they have no power over you. And yes, you may be forced to be a martyr at some point, but it's better to die fighting than to live on your knees as a slave under the yoke of these pretentious, inbred monsters. Yes, they're monsters, truly. And they're involved in black magical practices involving incest and bestiality and, the cake of light, you name it. There's the evil Eucharist. If you read Joseph Atwell's work, you'll see that they're cannibals, literally, and they force their victims to become cannibals, as you saw with Titus Andronicus. And it's this back and forth between people who are power mad and truly retarded. It's nothing against people with Down syndrome. They're angels as far as I'm concerned. It's humanity that's retarded. People who are of no fault to their own have different genetic expression. Oftentimes they're humbling us and requiring us to become better stewards and servants to those who need our guidance and our love. And so they're our teachers. But the real retarded people are the Masons and others who, so full of themselves and needing something to overcome the shame, I guess, they feel that they have the right to manipulate and shame others. Okay, so you can see the four beasts of the apocalypse here, and that these events are represented in the pattern of time in association with those four watchers, or those four corners of the heavens. So I hope this lays clear a little bit of what their whole mythology is about. Yes, there's real impressive scientific information embedded in these scriptures, but it is something where when it's doled out only to insiders who swear blood oaths, I think that's an obsolete mechanism at this point, with quantum computing being able to override our best encryption. You might as well get comfortable with the idea of not having privacy, at least in the public domain, but your internal privacy, your communion with the Creator, is your birthright. And for those who choose to seek dark power, well, perhaps you should consider that whatever is powerful enough to create this world is also powerful enough to really search your heart and know who you really are, and bend reality to teach you the lessons you need on whatever level. And if you're thinking that you're exempt because you swore oaths to ancient Babylonian trickster gods, well, good luck with that. And that goes for, all the secret society members out there. You're fooling yourselves. You're just mortal. You're not God. You're going to die someday. You might as well come correct before it's too late. Okay. On that note, I'm going to turn it back over to Joe. In the flow of conversation previously, I wasn't able to condense, this is almost 30, 40 minutes of material, into my answers, so I realized that I was going to have to take some time out and edit this and slice it in to the conversation later. So this is not the original continuity of the discussion, but I think it does a good job for at least establishing some of what Freemasons believe regarding the swastika and how they in different levels convey this information. I don't think most Masons are aware of the catastrophic aspect of it, but it is implied because they do in their symbolism have arcs and comets and this craft legend where they take refuge in the earth as Adonai, or excuse me, as Adonai or Yahweh bombards them. Again, you've heard my perspective. I think it's more of a moral issue. I think if we really were serious about creating a harmonic environment for our fellow man, and creating a universal brotherhood, then secrecy needs to go. Secrecy is a means of manipulating and holding power over others. And this is, you can see the rats scurrying with the release of things like the Podesta emails. You can see them none too happy that their method of control is being exposed, and that their puppets in Hollywood are being exposed for what they are, which is just minions of secret society. So withhold your ability to collapse the waveform from these idols. Don't worship another person. Don't put them on a pedestal. Don't celebrate anyone. Celebrate yourself and God and family. Be your own best person. Find your own way. Because trust me, the people who try to manipulate in this world, they can only do it with your consent.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I certainly know. I've been shown material that the swastika is relating to celestial phenomena. And you've done a much clearer explanation than the stuff I was sent. But that they were saying that the swastika is a Masonic representation of celestial events.
Yes.
That's what it is.